I remember that morning like it's been burned into my brain, frame by frame. It was Christmas Day just after 7. The sun hadn't even fully come up yet, just that pale winter glow stretching across the sky. The roads were still quiet. There was a light layer of snow clinging to the trees, making the whole drive feel like something out of a holiday card. Everything looked peaceful. It's strange how the world can look so perfect while your life is about to fall apart. I showed up early to Emma's parents' place, earlier than I said I would. I wanted it to be a surprise. I had picked up a last-minute gift for her mom, something small but thoughtful, and figured I'd help out with breakfast or setting the table. Maybe sneak in a kiss with Emma before the chaos of Christmas morning took over. That was the plan. That's how it was supposed to go. Their house was warm and quiet when I let myself in. The kind of cozy, slightly old house that smells like coffee grounds, cinnamon, and decades of family tradition. Their dog didn't even bark, just lifted his head from the couch and went back to sleep. I figured everyone was still in bed. It wasn't unusual. Emma and I were the early risers, usually. As I passed by the hallway, I slowed down. Voices. One voice, actually. Her voice. Emma was talking on the phone in the living room, her tone low but unmistakably calm. Not whispered, not secretive. She sounded steady, like she was reading off a script. I don't know what made me stop walking, but I did. I froze just before the doorway and listened. "I'm 3 weeks pregnant." Silence. Then she added casually, "And the father is my boss." There's a moment in everyone's life when your mind refuses to process what your ears just heard. Mine came right then. My first reaction wasn't rage or heartbreak. It was denial. Pure, automatic denial. I thought I had misheard her. I wanted to believe I had misheard her. There was no way. None. It didn't make sense. But then she said it again. This time, quieter. "I haven't told Mark yet. I'm waiting until after the holidays." Mark. That's me. My stomach flipped. I backed away from the hallway like I just stepped on something alive. My hands were suddenly cold. I remember pressing my fingers to my temples, trying to ground myself. I didn't want to believe what I heard. I stood there in the foyer like a ghost, replaying her voice in my head, trying to find some other explanation. Some alternative meaning to those words that didn't destroy everything I thought I knew about my wife. I remember staring at the gift bag in my hand, the one with her mom's candle set, and just feeling this wave of emptiness wash over me, like I had become this extra in someone else's life. A few minutes later, I walked into the living room deliberately, loud enough to make my presence known. Emma was curled up on the couch, legs tucked under her, holding her phone in one hand and a coffee mug in the other. She looked like nothing was wrong, like she was just enjoying a quiet Christmas morning. Her expression didn't change when she saw me, just that easy, familiar smile. "Oh, hey," she said, setting the mug down. "You're early." I think I mumbled something about traffic being light. My voice sounded normal. That's what scares me most, looking back. How easy it was to slip into autopilot. I gave her a hug. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Maybe she didn't know I had heard. Or maybe she didn't care. I couldn't even look at her the same. The entire day felt like I was outside of myself, watching some other version of me go through the motions. Wrapping paper, breakfast, small talk. Her parents joked and passed around gifts. I laughed when I was supposed to laugh, nodded when I was supposed to nod. Emma never broke character. She acted like everything was normal. Maybe to her it was. Later, when we were alone in the kitchen washing dishes, I asked her. Not accusingly, not harshly. Just asked. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This might sound weird, but when I got here earlier, I think I overheard you say something in the living room about being pregnant and something about your boss?" For a second, she blinked. Just a second, that moment when someone's brain has to decide between fight or flight. And then, she smiled. "Oh my God," she said, almost laughing. "Babe, no, you must have misheard. I was talking about a coworker. It's this whole running joke we've got going. I swear it wasn't serious. You've been so tired lately. Maybe your brain's just playing tricks on you." I remember how quickly she flipped it. like it was obvious that I had just imagined the whole thing. She even touched my arm lightly, that comforting kind of touch meant to say, everything's fine. That moment still haunts me, because I realized something terrifying. She was practiced. This wasn't panic. This wasn't a woman caught off guard. She wasn't nervous or defensive. She was prepared. Maybe you're just stressed, she added, rinsing off a plate. You haven't been sleeping much, right? And just like that, the conversation was over. She dried her hands, leaned in, and kissed me on the cheek again. The exact same way she had earlier, like she was pressing reset on the whole moment. I didn't push. I didn't confront her. Not then. I just stood there, watching her walk away, her hair bouncing behind her as she went upstairs to check on her dad. And I realized something chilling. She had just dropped a nuclear bomb on our life, and made me feel like I was the one losing my mind for noticing it. The drive home from Emma's parents' house felt like being trapped in a snow globe. Quiet, still, suffocating. She was in the passenger seat beside me, humming softly along to some holiday song on the radio like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't just had the most surreal conversation of my life in her parents' kitchen. Her hand even reached for mine at one point, fingers cold but familiar. I held it for about 10 seconds before letting go under the pretense of adjusting the heat. It wasn't just the words she said that morning that haunted me. It was how effortlessly she'd denied them, how quickly she'd pivoted the entire situation and made it about me. My stress, my tiredness, my imagination. I should have spoken up. I should have pressed harder. But instead, I kept my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road, and just started thinking. I didn't say much on the drive. I barely heard what she was talking about. Something about her cousin's engagement and the ski trip we never took. I just nodded occasionally, but my brain was running a completely different reel. It was like someone had finally turned the lights on in a room I'd been sitting in for years, and I was only now seeing all the cracks. Everything I had brushed off suddenly came rushing back, demanding my attention. The late nights at the office, they used to be once a week, then twice. Then I'd stopped counting. It became normal for her to come home after 10 p.m. with some excuse about a big deadline, a staff shortage, or a surprise meeting that just ran long. I believed her every single time. I didn't even question it. The weekends away. She had a friend who lived a few hours out, Kelsey. I'd met her once. Quiet, sweet, a little spacey. Emma visited her maybe once or twice a year. Then suddenly it became every few weeks. Always last minute, always for a mental reset. She said it helped her stay grounded. I encouraged it. Now I was starting to see those resets for what they were. Escapes. There were other things too. Small things that didn't seem like much at the time. But now they wouldn't leave me alone. She had become guarded with her phone. Always face down on the table. Always tucked into her bag the second she walked in the door. One time I handed it to her when it buzzed on the couch beside me, and she snatched it from my hand like I just picked up a live grenade. "Thanks," she said too quickly. "Just work stuff." At first, I respected her privacy. Everyone deserves some space. But then she started sleeping with it under her pillow. That was new. And then there were the vanishing conversations. Entire chunks of our shared lives seemed to just disappear. Plans we had made months earlier, trips, home projects, dinner dates. She'd suddenly claim she didn't remember. "I never said I wanted to go to Montreal," she'd laugh. "I think you dreamed that." Or, "We never talked about painting the guest room, babe. Where are you getting that from?" She always said it gently, never cruelly. Just light-hearted enough to make me question myself. And I always backed off, not wanting to push. Not wanting to be that guy. I started wondering how many times I'd accepted her version of events simply because she said it with confidence. The scary, realizing how easy it is to be erased from your own life. One forgotten conversation at a time. And then there was the shift in her energy. I don't know how else to describe it. There's no chart or checklist for emotional distance, but when you've lived with someone for long enough, you feel it when it happens. It's like sleeping next to someone whose warmth slowly fades until one day, you realize you're just lying next to silence. She started flinching at casual touch. My hand on her back in the kitchen. A kiss on her temple in the morning. Things that used to come naturally, now met with a slight pull away. Subtle but consistent. Her laughter changed too. She used to laugh with me. Now she just laughed near me. And every time I asked if something was wrong, she had the same answer. You're just tired. Don't overthink it. That phrase, don't overthink it, had become her go-to response for everything. I didn't see it for what it was until later. A script, a safety net, a defense mechanism. But in that car ride home from her parents' house, for the first time, I didn't let it comfort me. I let the suspicion in. I let myself rewind the last 6 months without putting her voice over it to smooth things over. And what I saw in that playback scared me. Because now, all those small inconsistencies, the forgotten dates, the wardrobe changes before staff dinners, the canceled trips, the late-night showers, the jumpy phone behavior, they weren't isolated. They were a pattern I had been too trusting, too tired, or maybe too naive to see for what it really was. I remembered one night in particular, a random Thursday about a month ago. I had gotten home from work early and decided to surprise her by cooking dinner. I was halfway through chopping vegetables when I realized I had forgotten to pick up the sauce she liked, so I texted her to ask if she could swing by the store on her way home. No reply, which was weird. She usually answered quickly. An hour passed, then another. I started to worry, called her, straight to voicemail. She walked through the door around 9:30 p.m. Hair slightly messy, eyes wide and tired. Sorry, she said, out of breath. Phone died. We had a fire drill at the office and it threw the whole day off. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But now, thinking back, that story didn't track. A fire drill? After dark? At an office with 5 employees? And why was her perfume so strong? Like she just reapplied it in the car. The night went on like nothing was wrong. We ate leftover pasta. She fell asleep on the couch. I even tucked a blanket around her. Feels so ridiculous now. The way I still tried to care for her, even when part of me already knew something was slipping away. That's what betrayal feels like. I think, not the dramatic, scream-filled movie version. It's quieter, slower. It's death by 1,000 cuts you didn't notice until you're already bleeding. That night after Christmas, I didn't sleep. I laid next to her, staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to her breath, soft, rhythmic, steady. I used to find that sound comforting. Now, it made me feel like a stranger in my own bed. She rolled over around 3 a.m., draping her arm across my chest like she used to. I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes wide open, wondering who else she had held like that, who else had heard her laugh the way she used to laugh with me. The next morning, she got up first, made coffee, played music in the kitchen while she fed the dog and danced like it was a normal day. But something inside me had shifted permanently. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't being paranoid. I was watching her with new eyes. Eyes that could finally see the cracks she had spent so long trying to paint over. Denial is comfortable. It gives you space to breathe, even while everything around you is burning. I lived in that space longer than I care to admit. I kept hoping, or maybe just pretending, that what I heard on Christmas morning had some other explanation. Something that would make it all okay. But reality doesn't stay hidden forever. It finds its way through. It always does. At first, I told myself I was just looking for peace of mind. That if I could just find something, anything, that proved I was wrong, I'd feel better. That I could let it go, apologize to her for being distant, and get back to whatever we had before. That version of me, the hopeful version, died the moment I checked our shared calendar app on a random Tuesday afternoon. There, sandwiched between dentist appointments and bill reminders, was a series of recurring events I had never noticed before. OT at HQ, listed on Thursdays. It had been happening for nearly 3 months. I don't know why that small detail hit me so hard. Maybe because I realized that even her lies were organized, polished, like she had rehearsed this. But I still needed more. Something undeniable. Something that didn't leave room for excuses. So I started paying attention. Her boss's name was David. I'd only met him once. A brief, Awkward handshake at the company Christmas party the year before. Mid-40s. Clean cut. One of those guys who smiled like he was already bored with you. Back then, I thought nothing of it. But after Christmas, I started connecting the dots. David was mentioned more often in passing now. David's on my case again. David wants me to redo this report. David's having a rough time with his wife. That last one had slipped out one night in January, while she poured herself a second glass of wine. I remember pausing and asking, "You guys talk about personal stuff?" She just shrugged and said, "We're close. It's not weird." Felt weird. One night, when she was asleep, I opened her laptop. It wasn't something I had ever done before. We weren't that couple. We had separate devices, separate passwords, mutual trust. Or so I thought. I didn't even have to dig. Her browser history was revealing. Multiple searches for things like early pregnancy symptoms. Can stress delay your period? How soon can a doctor confirm pregnancy? These searches dated back to early December, almost exactly 3 weeks before Christmas morning. The math wasn't complicated. I checked her emails next. She was still logged in. Nothing scandalous at first. Most messages were from coworkers, clients, normal stuff. But then I noticed she had a separate folder, tucked under her inbox, labeled simply drafts. It wasn't empty. The first email had no recipient. Just a subject line, "I don't know how to say this." Inside, a message half-written and abandoned. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I know it's going to hurt him and I hate myself for it, but I can't keep lying. It wasn't just a fling. It was more than that. I don't even know how to." That's where it stopped. The timestamp, December 21st, 4 days before Christmas. I remember just staring at the screen, my heart thudding in my chest like it was trying to get out. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a misheard sentence or a misunderstanding or some wild coincidence. It was real. She was pregnant, and the baby wasn't mine. I closed the laptop and just sat there in the dark, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I just sat there, listening to the faint sound of her breathing upstairs, wondering how long I had been living a life someone else was rewriting behind my back. The next morning I asked her, calmly, "Are you pregnant?" Her reaction was immediate, a beat too long, a flicker of something behind her eyes, fear, or maybe calculation. "No," she said quickly. "What? Where's that coming from?" I looked at her, really looked. "You sure?" I asked. She laughed, forced, thin. "Of course I'm sure. Why would you even ask that?" I could have called her out then, thrown the draft email in her face, demanded answers, but I didn't, because I didn't want answers anymore. I wanted truth, and I knew I wouldn't get it from her mouth. So I made a choice. I called an old friend, Marcus. We'd gone to college together. He worked in cybersecurity now. Quiet, paranoid guy, but trustworthy. I didn't give him many details, just told him I needed help accessing deleted messages. Texts specifically. He didn't ask questions. Just told me to back up her phone the next time she plugged it into the home Wi-Fi. Took 3 days. 3 days of pretending everything was fine, that I believed her when she said she was just working late, or when she told me she was grabbing drinks with coworkers, or when she said she was exhausted and needed space. 3 days of listening to her laugh in the kitchen and wondering who she had laughed like that with first. When Marcus sent me the recovered messages, I didn't open them right away. I sat with the email for an hour, just staring at the subject line. "Here's what you asked for." Finally, I clicked. It was all there. Hundreds of messages between her and David. Some innocent, some not. "You make me feel like I can breathe again. He's always so checked out lately. I don't even think he'd notice if I left. I dream about you more than I should. You're the only person who really sees me. I still can't believe that night happened. I keep thinking I imagined it. I want to tell him, but I don't know how. 3 weeks. I took the test. It's real. Don't worry. He doesn't know. He won't know unless I tell him. You'll be an amazing dad." I stopped there. I don't remember much after that. Just the feeling of my chest caving in. like the air had been **ked out of the room. I sat down on the floor of my office and stayed there for a long time, the messages still glowing on the screen, like they were mocking me. That was the moment it all became undeniable. Not a guess, not a gut feeling, not suspicion. Truth. She was pregnant with another man's child. And she had been lying to me for months. This wasn't some one-night lapse in judgment. This was a full-blown, sustained, calculated betrayal, the kind you build a second life around. I didn't confront her that night, or the next. I watched her, studied her, like someone observing a stranger from across the street. The way she moved, the way she smiled at me like I still mattered, the way she touched her stomach sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking. It was already growing inside her, the life they made together. In my house, in my bed. During the months when I thought she was just tired, or stressed, or overworked. Every detail now had context. Every date that didn't add up. Every time she said, "I'm just tired." Every canceled plan. Every new dress. Every whisper at the dinner table. It all made sense now. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was a placeholder. A decoy. A shadow she had already started stepping away from. And no matter how many lies she told, or how many times she smiled at me like I was still hers, I knew, deep down, that she had already chosen. And it wasn't me. There was a version of me, maybe a past version or maybe just a voice in my head, that wanted a confrontation. That version wanted to flip the kitchen table, to drag out her lies into the open, word by word, and force her to look at what she'd done. To watch the guilt twist her face when I asked how long she planned on keeping me in the dark. To look David in the eye and ask him if taking another man's life apart felt as thrilling as he imagined it would. But I didn't listen to that voice. Because the truth is, nothing you say to someone like that matters. When a person's already decided to lie to you, when they've created a whole separate reality to live inside, any confrontation only gives them more room to perform. More time to spin the narrative in their favor. To paint you as dramatic, unstable, insecure, controlling, angry, paranoid. So I didn't give her that. I didn't give them that. I gave them silence. And I planned my exit like a quiet revolution. It started with my mind. I stopped asking myself why. I stopped wondering what I could have done differently. That loop, the one where you try to rewind time and find the fork in the road where everything split, it only leads to more pain. The truth was simple. She didn't stop loving me because I failed. She stopped because she chose to, over and over again. The next step was practical. I made copies of everything. Emails, texts, calendar entries, bank statements. I backed up photos from my phone, saved receipts. I even took **TS of her draft folder, the one she thought was invisible. The one where she stored half-written truths and never had the nerve to send them. Then I opened a new bank account, moved my direct deposit, changed the password to my personal email, cleared out the drawer where I kept important papers and transferred everything to a small locked box I kept in the trunk of my car. Not because I was planning something vindictive, just because I wanted to be ready. Quiet preparation is a strange thing. You start moving through the world differently. The same rooms look different when you know you're walking through them for the last time. The first room I let go of was our bedroom. We used to fall asleep holding hands. Then she started sleeping with her back turned. Then she started falling asleep downstairs on the couch. Just for a few minutes, she'd say. Then entire nights would pass, and I'd wake up alone. So I started sleeping in the guest room. At first, I said it was because of my snoring. Then it was because of work stress. She didn't question it. In fact, she seemed relieved. That told me everything I needed to know. I started packing slowly. Not boxes, that would be too obvious. Just small things. A couple of shirts. My favorite hoodie. My passport. My phone charger. A framed photo of my parents. I stored them in my trunk, piece by piece, like I was stealing parts of myself back before someone else could claim ownership over them. I never once asked her about the baby. She never once brought it up. It became this unspoken truth hanging between us. Something neither of us acknowledged but both of us felt. especially in those quiet moments where we'd lock eyes over dinner and look away almost instantly. She still smiled sometimes, still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still asked me to pick up almond milk on the way home, still called me babe. But it all felt mechanical, like muscle memory from a life she was no longer living in. And yet, to anyone watching from the outside, we looked fine, stable, maybe even happy. That's how betrayal works, I think. It doesn't show itself in big, obvious ways. It hides in the spaces between smiles, in the silences, in the way someone's laughter sounds slightly more hollow than it used to. By the second week of January, I had everything in place. My name removed from the lease, my personal belongings secured, a temporary apartment rented, keycards copied, mail forwarded. My lawyer, a quiet, meticulous woman named Sandra, had already walked me through the first steps of divorce prep. We agreed I wouldn't file until after I left. No warning, no announcement, no scene. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Because I realized something. Emma wanted me to explode. She wanted a meltdown, a screaming match, a dramatic finale she could point to and say, see, he was unstable. He lost it. That's why I left. She wanted a villain, and I refused to give her one. So I waited. The day I left wasn't significant on the calendar. No holiday, no anniversary, just a Thursday. She left for work around 7:45 a.m. Same routine. A quick kiss on the cheek, keys jingling. Don't forget we have dinner with Jenna and Miles next week. I nodded. She didn't notice I was already wearing my boots. She didn't notice the duffel bag tucked beside the couch. She didn't notice the last look I gave our home. The way my eyes lingered on the photo frames, the small crack in the tile near the sink, the coffee stain on the armrest where she used to sit cross-legged reading travel blogs. She didn't see any of it. And when her car backed out of the driveway, I stood in the kitchen, exhaled slowly, and turned off my phone. Then I left. No note, no explanation, no forwarding address. I didn't even take the car. I walked 4 blocks to the parking garage where I had stashed the backup vehicle I'd borrowed from my brother. Neutral-colored, unremarkable, untraceable. And as I drove out of our neighborhood, I felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, just silence. There's a kind of freedom in disappearing from someone's story without asking for a final chapter. It doesn't come with applause or closure, but it comes with peace. That night, I didn't stay in the city. I drove for hours, past highways I hadn't seen in years, through towns I'd only passed on road trips. I checked into a motel near a lake we once visited years ago, when things were still real. I remembered us laughing there. I remember her holding my hand without hesitation. That version of her, the one who loved me with both hands, was gone. I took a walk by the water. The air was sharp and cold. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but there were no tears left. Just the strange stillness of finally being alone in a life that was no longer being shared with a ghost. Back in the motel room, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the silence I'd left behind. I wondered when she would realize I was gone. I wondered what she'd tell her parents or her boss or the friends we had in common. I wondered if she'd lie or if she'd finally tell the truth. But then I realized it didn't matter. I wasn't there to correct the story anymore. I had removed myself from the equation entirely. And that, I think, is the most powerful thing you can do when someone betrays you. Walk away without needing to be seen walking away. No dramatics, no closure, just absence. Because absence can't be rewritten. And the silence I left behind would speak louder than anything I ever could have said. The silence didn't hit her immediately. I imagined her walking through the door that evening, maybe balancing her phone between her shoulder and ear, complaining to someone about traffic or work. She'd probably kick off her boots by the door like always, toss her bag on the counter, and shout something to me from across the house without looking up. Only this time I wouldn't answer, and I pictured the moment that realization would land, how the weight of it would start to settle in slowly. No car in the driveway, no shoes at the door, no jacket on the hook, my toothbrush gone, my pillow missing, drawers half empty, and finally, the duffel bag missing from the corner where it had quietly sat for 2 days before I left. I didn't imagine it with satisfaction. Not exactly. Just clarity. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was just done trying to explain why I deserved better. I didn't text her. I didn't block her. I just vanished. And the fallout, it started creeping in all on its own. First, she sent one message. Then two. Then three. Hey, where are you? Are you okay? Please answer. I'm getting worried. Then came the shift. Mark, this isn't funny. What is going on? Why would you just disappear like this? Are you seriously punishing me for something you imagined? There it was, the first swing at rewriting the truth. Blame shifting. Twisting absence into instability. Painting her confusion as evidence of my irrationality. As if my vanishing act came out of nowhere. As if I had lost it. That was the narrative I knew she'd lean into. Predictable. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because she wasn't just losing me. She was starting to lose control of the story. By the second week, cracks began forming in the polished version of herself she presented to the world. I still had access to one of her social media accounts. She never changed the password, probably because she didn't expect me to. I never posted or interacted. I just watched. First, everything looked normal. A few selfies. Some girl dinner story reposts. A blurry boomerang from her office party. She looked fine. Unbothered, even. Then the tone shifted. More vague captions. More song lyrics. More silence. She stopped posting pictures of us, obviously. Started removing old ones, too. The wedding photo. A hiking trip in Asheville. An anniversary dinner. Each one disappeared quietly, like we'd never happened. I expected that. But what caught my attention was a comment left by one of her coworkers on a recent post. You okay? Been weird around the office. Weird around the office. I almost laughed. Of course it had. David worked there. The man she had slowly built a second life with. The one she was now tied to by more than just flirtation or secret messages. There was a child coming. And even if no one else knew that yet, she did. And I wasn't around to take the hit for it anymore. Because that was the real source of the fallout, the vacuum I left behind. The role I refused to keep playing. The convenient excuse for her emotional unraveling. Her double life, her lies. Without me there to absorb it, the questions started piling up. One of her friends, Sarah, texted me about 10 days after I left. She was one of the few from Emma's side I actually liked. Hey Mark, I don't mean to intrude. Just wanted to check in. Emma's been off lately. Said you're on a trip? Not sure if that's true. I hope you're all right. I didn't respond. Because even silence is a kind of truth. The thing about liars is they need an audience. Someone to perform for. Someone to believe them. Validate them. Help carry the weight of their story. When I removed myself, she had to carry it alone. And it was heavier than she expected. I heard from mutual friends that work had become tense. That people started noticing how often she left early. How short her temper had become. How she started snapping at small things. Someone mentioned an HR complaint. Another said she broke down crying in the break room one afternoon. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't even feel good about it. But I understood it. That's what happens when consequences finally arrive. Her boss, David, became harder to track. He didn't have much of a social presence. But from what I gathered, people at the office started speculating. About them. About how close they really were. About whether lines had been crossed. And for the first time, those suspicions weren't getting deflected toward me. Because I wasn't there to distract anyone anymore. I had walked out of the story completely. And without a scapegoat, everything started pointing back to her. The collapse wasn't instant. It never is. It was slow. Messy. Human. I heard through someone, maybe Sarah again, that Emma requested time off, that she claimed to be burnt out, that people had started whispering, some out of concern, some out of curiosity. I don't know if she ever told anyone the truth, but I imagine the weight of hiding it started to crack her open in ways she hadn't planned for. Because this was never just about me leaving. It was about what she built in the space I used to occupy, and what happened to that fragile, fabricated world when it was left to stand on its own. And it didn't. Not really. She had built her story on two things: secrecy and certainty. Secrecy that I would never know. Certainty that if I did find out, I'd react emotionally, yell, cry, beg, unravel. Give her something to point at, a reason to say, "Look what you've done, Mark." But I didn't. And that's what unraveled her instead. Because when I left quietly, no note, no fight, no scene, I also left no target. No proof that I was the unstable one. No convenient character for her to contrast herself against. Just stillness. And the stillness started to echo, even in her own head. That's how the fallout began. Not with a bang, but with a hollow thud. A realization. A silence that stretched on too long. A truth that couldn't be dodged anymore. Because here's what I know now. People like Emma don't fear being wrong. They fear being seen being wrong. They fear the quiet truths. The kind that don't need to scream. The kind that don't offer them an easy villain. The kind that stay behind, long after you've walked away, and live in the spaces they can't fill. Not with lies, not with distractions, not even with someone else's child. The kind of truth that simply is unmovable. And that's what I left behind. Not a storm, not a scene. Just the weight of her own decisions. Slowly settling in around her like dust she'll never fully clean up. 3 weeks after Christmas, the silence broke. Her sister texted me. Just a simple, "You knew, didn't you?" Turns out Emma hadn't been able to keep the story straight. Her pregnancy wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was real, undeniable, and didn't align with our timeline. The family pieced it together fast. The affair, the boss, my disappearance, all of it. And that's when it hit them. I hadn't left in a rage. I had left with clarity. I had seen the truth before anyone else and walked away without needing their approval or understanding. They finally realized the story wasn't mine to explain. It was hers to answer for. I never went back. Not for closure, not for explanations, not even for revenge. I understood now, betrayal doesn't always come with screaming matches. Sometimes it comes with silence, distance, and a locked door that stays shut. She had written a script where I was meant to beg, to break, to play my part. But I tore up the pages. My final act was not showing up. And that silence? That was the loudest truth I could leave behind.